It's time to start up the how to play guides again. I've only ever really done one official one before, but that was a long time ago, and I've been asked to do more times than I can count. So today I'm going to be teaching you all how to play the Lost Hand, Koga. Koga is a very mobile flank, sporting a variety of movement abilities, more so than any other character in the game. Wall climbing, shadow step, agility, and skewer, all of which give different ways to move throughout the map. Due to this high level of mobility, Koga's lethality, at least with his base weapons, is a lot lower than most of the flanks. He doesn't have the same damage or burst as many of the other flanks. Again, that's with his base weapons. He does have that level of damage and burst while in his dragon stance, but there is the trade-off of being much more vulnerable. This often leaves Dragon Stance as a moment of power ability, instead of a second primary weapon. So for the most part, you're going to be using your SMGs more often than not. Due to your high mobility and a lower damage, you're going to be playing a lot more like a skirmisher, going in, getting some damage on enemies, and using your mobility to survive and buy time, while forcing people to back off, forcing their cooldowns, forcing their attention, then getting out. This creates opportunities for your teammates to capitalize on. They go in while you get out, and when the enemy team's attention is focused back on your team, you go right back in when they think you're gone and finish them off. Now keep in mind, your goal is not to force everyone's attention on you. If everyone is looking at you, you'll likely end up dying. Focus on forcing attention from key targets, like their most impactful DPS character, or the support. Forcing the attention of tanks can also end up being pretty impactful. For example, if the enemy Torvald is looking at you, then they aren't bubbling their carry. Of course, for that particular example, be mindful to stay out of silence range. Whose attention you force is always dependent on the situation, really. I also want to point out that you can force attention of a support without even attacking them. If they see you attacking somebody else, they'll likely put their attention towards healing them to keep them alive. Again, use your mobility and your sustain to keep that attention focused away from the main fight. It'll prove to be a big advantage for your teammates. Now, like I said, Koga is more of a skirmisher. He's not a duelist. Don't attempt to straight up duel other duelists like Leon, Cassie, Androxus, Lex, etc. These characters are designed to win 1v1s. You may have a lot of mobility, but that won't stop them from winning a duel with you. It is very easy for characters like these to time your dashes and hit you as you come out of them, especially duelists with large amounts of burst like Leon and Cassie. If they get some prior damage on you, and you dash without getting behind something, they can easily hit you with a lot of burst as you come out of that dash, killing you before you're able to buy any time for your team. Play safe against characters like these, and don't attempt to duel them unless you have some kind of clear advantage. Now what about your claws? I mentioned they're a moment of power. Like I said, the claws give you a lot of damage and a burst, with the trade-off of being more vulnerable. All you really have is agility during Dragon Stance, and while that does help, it doesn't help much. Without Shadow Step, you're definitely a lot more vulnerable. You do have Skewer, but this uses all of your energy, leaving you completely vulnerable if you aren't able to get to a completely safe location with it. There are several ways to make use of your claws. If you find yourself out of ammo, you can quickly swap to your claws and use them as a finisher. If an enemy is far away, your claws have a lot of range with no damage fall off, so they are superior to your SMGs at a distance. Your claws can also be used to burst down full health unaware targets. When doing this though, be positive that your target is alone, because if somebody else notices you, the combination of those two enemies will easily be enough to burst you down in your more vulnerable state before you kill anybody. I do want to point out that you can quickly combine a claw attack and a skewer for a 1350 burst of damage. But again, skewer is risky. Using this burst combo could leave you as a free pick for the enemies if they realize you just killed their ally. If you're able to combine this burst combo with the mobility of Skewer, using it to both get the kill and to get far out of harm's way, then that's a very value play, I'd say. Now that's Koga's main playstyle. Let's talk about the builds and talents you can use with this playstyle. So, the talent for Koga's main playstyle is Adrenaline Junkie. This talent restores energy upon SMG hits. This allows you to use your abilities more often, greatly upping your total mobility, sustain, and possibly damage output with your claws to use it that way if you see fit. Now when it comes to builds, Koga has a lot of potential variety in builds. For his builds, a big part of it is of course preference. Adrenaline Junkie Koga builds often have a lot of focus on one of two things, Shadow Step or Agility. Of course, you can use both abilities at any time, but people do tend to focus on one more than the other, and you of course only have so many loadout points. So whatever ability you focus on more is the one that's going to have loadout cards buffing it up. If you focus more on dashing, you're going to be looking at something like this. Very high Tenacious because it'll be your main form of self-sustain. Very high Surprise because ammo is very important on Koga. You fire very fast and don't have too big of a clip, so you'll often find yourself needing more ammo. Those are the main cards. For me personally, I always like to run at least Harsh Training too. You do have good sustain, but 1900 is still a rather low health number. Swift Hands is a pretty decent filler, unless you literally never pull out your claws. I do like having something to prove at level 3 because it gives you a full bar of energy back, and that one bar has saved my life so many times. Keep in mind that Koga's dash cleanses Cauterize, so all it takes is one dash to get you full healed in the middle of a fight. I really like having a Furia or Grover when playing Koga, and that's because they can both instantly burst heal you mid-dash, and that is very powerful. So having that extra dash to either possibly get you to safety or get you healed is pretty impactful. It is an interchangeable card though. Koga does have a good amount of room for personalized builds. Normally I never use agility at all when focusing on my dashes. Sometimes I will use it in order to rotate around the map faster, but that's about it. If you're somebody who uses agility a bit more than that, then maybe you want to put raw talent in there. In this particular case, it'd be 3 points, so it'd bring your total agility speed up to 42%, and that's pretty good. I think the base 30% of agility is pretty meh, so increasing it with raw talent if you're going to use it is always a good call. Nimble does stack with it as well, but there are diminishing returns on stacking it with Nimble since they are two different sources of speed. There's also another version of the Junkie build that I think is pretty good. Still the same cards for the most part, all the important ones, but now there's Trigger Happy. And this is a very good card if you're getting pocketed. Greatly increases the amount of heals you receive. It also counters Cauterize to a degree. I run level 4 personally, so I can lower Caught 3 from 90 to 50% while firing. If you want to stack Rejuve 3 on top of that, you lower it down to 20%. In my opinion, Trigger Happy is best paired with a Genos, because Genos is the easiest character to pocket with currently. He has up to 3 heal marks, so he can possibly always have one on you. I do also want to point out that Trigger Happy will in fact buff the dash heal from Tenacious if you dash while shooting. Then there are of course the agility builds. For ammo, you'd want Wanted this time. Raw Talent, again, is important since agility at base isn't all that great of a speed bonus. Wind's Embrace offers pretty decent sustain. Agility lasts for 4 seconds, so if you have Wind's Embrace at level 5, it would give you 400 total healing per agility use. I also have Trigger Happy as a filler because it helps out Wind's Embrace. I really do wish I could run it higher, but there's only so many loadout points. You could swap that out for Swift Hands if you like using your claws. I don't have it in this build because I rarely pull out my claws when running Agility Koga. Then there's an agility build with more Trigger Happy for you if you're being pocketed. Now this build was a tough one. Again, only so many points, so I had to sacrifice raw talent. So I do tend to buy Nimble after Cauterize with this build. If it's a smaller map, then 34% speed isn't too bad on its own, but on bigger maps you can feel it. Again, this is something that works well with a Genos. Trigger Happy will buff up both Wind's Embrace and the Genos Pocket of course. And that's it for Koga's main playstyle. He does have 2 others that revolve around his other talents though. The other two talents are riskier and not quite as effective in my opinion, but I still want to go over them because some of you may end up enjoying them. The next one is centered around the Dragonfangs Talent. So this talent makes it so Dragon Stance doesn't drain energy, but instead drains 200 health per second. So if built right and played correctly, you could run around using your claws as your primary weapon. The claws do of course apply Cot and Wrecker, and they are affected by damage amps. Now this talent does make you even more vulnerable than you already are in Dragon Stance due to the health drain. You can of course build around that with a build like this. So since the claws don't drain energy, you're free to spam agility during Dragon Stance. This is why Wind's Embrace is at level 5. 100 healing per second cuts the 200 health drain per second in half. Then on top of that, there's Criminal Record to give your claws lifesteal. So as long as you're hitting targets and using agility, you are nullifying the health drain. You can also buy Life Rip to stack on top of Criminal Record. Since agility is going to be your main form of movement, there is of course Raw Talent to buff it up. So this talent is something you mainly only want to run if you have some kind of pocket, like a Genos or a Torvald. Something that helps sustain you while damage amping you. Like I said, you are very vulnerable, so those two help you out a lot. Get into the habit of constantly swapping in and out of your claws as well. If you're not attacking somebody or about to attack them, cancel your claws. Don't take unnecessary damage. If you feel like you're about to be put in a risky spot, cancel them and dash out. You are definitely a very fragile, but powerful glass cannon with this build. So be mindful of what's going on around you and play smart or you'll be nothing more than a free kill. Then there's Blood Reaper, and this talent does 100% of a target's health as damage over its duration. It also currently increases your ult charge rate by 15%. So personally I don't think this talent is worth running whatsoever, but let's go over it in case you still want to use it. So the big thing about this talent is having high level memento. At max level, you get 10% ult charge for killing an enemy, on top of whatever charge you got from damaging them in the first place. Outside of that, you basically run the cards depending on if you want to focus on dashing or agility. You don't have Junkie, so you can't use your abilities as much. So play a lot safer, clean up kills, and focus your ultimate onto tanks after they've used their movement abilities, because if you ult them while they have those abilities up, they'll just use them to easily get out of your ultimate. Now, this isn't out currently, but in the near future, Koga will end up probably receiving some ult buffs. So his ult charge rate is going up by 40% because it's 40% lower than the other flanks, and Blood Reaper is losing the 15 extra charge rate and is instead getting more movement speed in the ult. So it will be harder for your enemies to get out of your ult. Now, right now I don't really recommend using Blood Reaper, and even after the buff, I don't recommend using Blood Reaper. Most ultimate-based talents aren't very good. You give up way too much of your neutral game to buff up your ultimate, and Koga does have one of the weaker ultimates in the game. I do want to talk about his ultimate specifically because I haven't yet. Half of the time, at least when you're not using Blood Reaper, you're going to want to use your ultimate as a survival ult. Use it to get around a corner when you have no energy. Use it to make people back off of you, or to give your healer a big window of opportunity to heal you. These are often its main uses because its kill potential isn't very good. It does do 3000 damage, but enemies can be healed during it because it doesn't apply Cot, and movement abilities will easily get people out of it. On top of that, the ultimate is risky. You can be attacked at the end of it before you even get out of it. Now, I'm not saying it can't get kills because it totally can, but it requires some prior setup, like an ally using something like an Inara or Ceres ult to immobilize enemies, or for enemy movement abilities to be on cooldown so you can use it on them when they can't get away. You also have to work around enemy heal cooldowns, and stuff like Grover, Ying, and Fernando ult. Mainly the point is don't only use it to kill things. Use it to kill things when you know it can. Outside of that, use it to survive or make space. I do also want to talk about his wall climb since I haven't yet either. This is a passive, so you have vertical mobility on no cooldown as long as there's a wall to climb. Now, most of the maps were made without this wall climb in mind, so there are plenty of things that look like you can climb on them, but you really can't. Basically, when it comes to this, time and experience are big. You have to play Koga and attempt to climb on multiple different parts of multiple different maps before you know what you can and can't climb on. Once you do though, it's very helpful. Getting around the map with Koga is very easy. A big part of that is due to his wall climb. There's also some other Koga specific tips I want to talk about. I'll go ahead and rapid fire my way through these. While dashing, aim at the enemy you want to attack, so the second the dash ends, you can start firing. When running around a corner while being chased, climb up a wall if you know the enemy isn't going to see you do it. They'll come around the corner expecting you to be there, only to be a bit confused when they don't. Meanwhile, you're above them and can easily come down on top of them and get the jump on them. If you're too low to do that, your dashes don't have any gravity, so if the wall you're currently on is taller than a nearby wall, you could dash over that nearby wall and get away with ease without the enemy seeing you. And even if they do see you, most will not have the vertical mobility to go after you over that wall. When fighting slow fire rate characters like Shaolin or Atlas for example, time your dashes. Attack them during their weapons' downtime, and dash as they fire their weapon. Perfecting this makes it very hard for slow fire rate characters to duel you. Also, keep in mind enemy abilities and ultimates. Do your best to attempt and read an enemy to see if they're going to hit you with a powerful ability or ultimate, so you can dash as they do it. Many times, Dambas like to ult flanks that jump on them. Same with Pepper, I mean Pip. Please comment section, no, it hurts. I do my best to force these ults out and dash as they happen. Plays like this are huge value. You get their ult for basically free, and you'll likely kill them too. Of course, like I said, do this against enemy abilities too. I love dodging salvo, baiting out Makoa hook, etc. There are tons of things you can dodge and waste by reading and baiting your enemy. Your ult can be used to counter other ultimates as well. If Drogos is going for one of your tanks, you can ult on that tank and the Drogos will either fly away, or he'll get the tank kill, but he'll die right after. BK ult also works the same way. Ruckus ult or Atlas ult, they basically make themselves sitting ducks. If you ult them, they're forced to cancel their ults or likely die. Barrack ult is another one I love to counter. You can kill his ult turret and force him out of the dome. Terminus is another. Use your ult as his ult goes off, and he's respawning into a ton of damage. There's plenty of other ways you can use your ult to counter other ults, those are only a few examples. For his SMGs, they do of course only do moderate damage, so critting is a big thing with them. However, aiming only for the head will make you miss a lot of bullets due to the spread of the bullets. Unless you're fighting a big head character like Barrack or Makoa. Outside of that, it is best to aim for their chest, so the upper spread of the bullets will automatically get some critical hits, while also not missing a lot of bullets due to the spread. This character is very tracking intensive obviously, so train your tracking. Anyway, that's the last of my tips. This has been how to play Koga. Hopefully you learned a lot. Koga is a pretty high skill character, he does take a good amount of practice, so if you plan on playing Koga, take everything I said here and practice with it, get used to it. Koga right now is looked at as pretty bad, at least on PC, and of course PC is what this how to play is based on, but I don't really agree with him being bad. In esports, he definitely is, and at high level team play with voice comms like scrims, he's also pretty bad because that's like a lesser esports. But as far as the normal public game in general, I don't think he's all that bad. He could definitely use a little love in certain areas, and Blood Reaper is bad and probably needs to be turned into something else, but besides that, I do think this character does do his job pretty well. Obviously, he's not good against every character. Again, characters built for dueling make things hard on him, but most characters do perform better against certain other characters, and that's fine. So I am gonna do more of these how to plays. I did really enjoy making this one. If you guys want to let me know who you want to see next, you can. No promises that it'll happen next though. I'm kinda basing these both off of character popularity and what characters I have a lot of time on, like level 50 or more. That's without buying levels, of course. But if I see you guys wanting a certain character I do have a lot of time on, that definitely could affect how much I prioritize making a how to play video on them. Currently, Maeve is the one I want to do next, but that could change. We'll see. Anyways, that's pretty much it, guys. I want to thank you all for watching. I very much appreciate it, and I'm gonna see you guys laters. Bye.